I've got like 30 minutes. And what can I say that's going to make a difference for you? Because today, not particularly my conversation maybe, but the topic that we're talking about today is going to be crucial. Because if you do not get the practical aspects of your life, you will fail. You will fail as a doctor, you will fail your family, you will fail yourself, and you will fail your ministry of caring for others. And so it's crucial. 30 minutes, what do I say? Well, first of all, let's start about the title that comes out of my generation, how to be successful. That word successful has a lot of things that are tied to it, probably bad as well as good. The old paradigm of success was, in my generation, was you would first search for success, and then you would search for significance. Success was such that, what did I do for myself? How did I take care of me? My career, my trajectory, my path, my advancement. And then what happened to our generation was we would hit our midlife crisis, and then we would go, oh my gosh, is that all there is? Something's got to be different. And then we would start looking for significance. And significance is, what do I do for others? So I want to present to you that the new paradigm of success is not success and then significance, but it's success in your significance. You have to be significant now, from the beginning. And significance is not for yourself. It's for the kingdom of God, isn't it? And so today, I want you to get a hold of the fact that you have to be practical and diligent in the use of all of your resources and the maintenance of all of your resources so that you can afford emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, relationally to be able to be significant for His kingdom your whole life. So success, what is it? We talked about the old model between success and significance. Here's another very important and crucial paradigm shift that we have to hold on to. And that is, the old paradigm was, from the turn of last century up until probably 15, 20 years ago, the paradigm was, I am living to be part of God's kingdom when I die. More and more in the last 20 years, we have come to understand that that our job, our role, is not to live for God's kingdom when we die, but to bring God's kingdom to this earth now. We are the hands, we are the feet of Christ. We are the hope. And so, again, we talk about that. That sounds idealistic, and yet, why do we fail? Why all this talk of failure? Because the marriage between the ideals, the things that we need to do, and the practical that we're not trained or educated in, they don't come together. And as a result, no matter how much passion, no matter how deep our commitment to the Lord is, we fail. Statistically, we fail, and in alarming rates. Why do we have to get it right? Why do we as doctors have to get this right? Because we live in a broken world. Today, the world that we live in is arguably one of the most broken generations that we could ever have faced. From the older generation, what are they facing right now? We've got a large group of older people that have lived their life in making and being aggressive and being successful in earning a lot and in creating a lot of things for themselves, and yet they spent it. Couple that with the fact that medical technology can take this group of people and make them live long badly. So my generation is going to live long badly without a lot of resources. And your generation is the one that's going to be supporting them. That is a major problem. But on top of that, your generation, the generations after me, have a big problem. More and more this generation is facing isolation. You are facing instability on every count of your lives. You are facing loneliness, depression, unsurety, both in emotional terms and in real terms of economic terms. Right now, we are a generation of technology, and our relationships are a lot of times on the iPads, are on our phones, and yet your generation is considered now one of the loneliest generations by surveys that there is. You are totally, totally, totally connected and totally, totally separate from each other. So this loneliness and this isolation, this lack of ability to communicate in a face-to-face and interpersonal skills is piling up. You don't join groups. You don't get involved in community as much. And yet, the exciting thing for you is that you have a passion, unlike the generations before you, of making a difference. You, unlike our generation, are more focused on others and less focused on ourselves, be that secular or Christian. The wave that sweeps our country right now is a group of young people that want to make a difference. But again, how are we going to really make that happen? You have an opportunity like no other. In Matthew, in the chapter of Matthew 25, in 14 through 30, when they talk about the parable of the talents, we make a mistake in our interpretation of the talents. We think of it as our specific abilities, our logic ability, our ability to analyze, or our artistic ability, or our musical ability, and how we apply that. But that's not exactly how the talents are laid out. If you interpret it most accurately, it is we have been given a talent, a portion, an opportunity. In the Old Testament, when the Israelites faced going into the new country, it was called their moment of kairos, their moment of God-given opportunity. This is your moment of kairos, and this is your moment of God-given opportunity. You have been given a portion, and you have been given an opportunity. That opportunity is something that you have to be prepared to do. So how do we do that? And what do we face? What's the reality of your life statistically if you don't get this right? Doctors face a high degree of suicide, depression, divorce, alienation from children, drug abuse and alcohol abuse, early death and poor health. How do we reconcile that? The generations before you, this is statistically where they are at. What are you going to do with this? Well, it becomes very important for you to understand your life and what you're going to do with it now. First of all, a lot of us lack purpose in our lives. When we start out, we do all of the planning that we want to do. We plan and plan and plan how we're going to get into medical school, how we're going to get into residency, how we're going to get our first good job, and then our planning from there usually stops, and we're done. Our education is such that we don't have an education in economics, finance, business, accounting, all of the areas that are so boring to us, all of the areas that we didn't do that. If we wanted to be a businessman or a businesswoman, we would have been business majors. We became doctors because we want to make a difference. But I propose to you that the problem is that you have to be good at these other kinds of things. You have to be good at your economic life. You have to be good at your business life. You have to be good at those other skills, not so that you can make a lot of money, but so that you can be a great doctor, so that you can manage the resources that you have and make it sustainable. As a result of not managing our resources, there's a lack of balance in our resources. We are overwhelmed physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and mentally. We end up being what's called a hamster on the wheel. Have you ever heard of that? Anybody ever have a hamster when they were growing up? Okay. Well, the hamster runs in that wheel thing, and it runs, it gets nowhere, right? So what happens to us as doctors, we start later, we end earlier, and so when we start later, we have this delayed gratification. And if we have families already, they've delayed in the gratification too. When we finally get to the point where we can have stuff, and we go out, and we get out into the real world, and we see our colleagues have these houses and these cars and these things around us, and we think, wonderful, we've paid the price for this, and we see our colleagues owning these things, and so we go to the bank, and the bank says, if your name's doctor, you can have the loan. If it was Mr. or Mrs., you can't have the loan. but they give you loans you shouldn't have, and then you get involved in these things, and what happens? It's too late. Now you find out that your colleagues did not own those things. Those things owned your colleagues. But it's too late. And you know why they didn't tell you? Because they want you to share in their misery. Not true. But now you're like behind the eight ball. So you're having to maintain all of this stuff. And so the only thing you know, because you don't have these other skills, these business skills, these economic skills, these balancing skills, you only know how to work. And so you work harder. What happens is when you work harder, you're isolated from your family. Your family gets out in the community, and the community starts to tell them what their lives should look like, what kind of car they should drive, what kind of country clubs they should be a member of, what kind of school your kids should go to. They start feeling isolation and loneliness. So they start coming to you for things. You feel guilty. You don't have the time. You buy them more things. The more things makes you work more. And the next thing you know, you're 50 years old and you wonder what happened. And the best and the brightest the world had to offer ends up living a life of quiet desperation because you did not get the management of your resources, the responsibility of your resources correct. First of all, we have to understand our role. We talked about stewards of the talents that God has given us. We have to understand today that our work is holy. An old paradigm was that the pastor did the work that was holy and our work is secular. That is not true. Biblically, our work is holy and ordained because that glorifies God is holy. So our work is holy and we must perform it as a ministry. We must perform it as mission. We have to understand one of the things is, what is the purpose in our life? We should never ask what our purpose in life is, because none of us in this room has a purpose that's different than the other. Our purpose is the same, and that is to glorify God. Never ask yourself what your purpose in life is, because your purpose is the same. It is to glorify God. We have to understand that how to achieve purpose in life, which is to glorify God, comes in a certain amount of layers. Vision, mission becomes our unique ability, our unique way that we're going to fulfill God's role in terms of His purpose for our lives, is to glorify Him. Vision and mission is how we are going to do it, whether we do it as a radiologist, or whether we do it as a pediatrician, or whether we do it as a heart surgeon. Whatever we do, that is our particular goal, and it finally narrows down to activities. If we understand that our life is about serving God and about glorifying Him, our activities every day, if they are aligned, are glorifying God. And so that we know that we can live in today, and we know that the activities that we are doing are fulfilling God's purpose. Goals can change, mission can change, but purpose does not. We have to understand the reality of life. We're going to go into how to manage resources, what kind of resources you have to manage, but you have to understand one of these major facts, and that is all of the things that we talk about is that life is hard. There's a new wave of therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. It went from Freudian to cognitive behavioral therapy, and as a spectrum of other things in between, to finally acceptance and commitment. And this comes down to one simple idea. Life is hard. As you graduate and as you go on, life doesn't get easy just because you graduate, just because you finish residency. Life is hard. It will continue to be hard. You will have pain. You will have joys. You will have sorrows. And you will have to manage all of the time structures, the family pressures, the financial pressures, accepting that God has a purpose, and you will have to have a commitment to serve Him. Now let's talk about resource management. Resource management is vital because the biggest reason that you will fail financially is this. You will fail financially not because you picked the wrong mutual fund, not because you picked the wrong pension plan, not because you picked the wrong accountant. It is because you didn't manage all of your resources well. You will fail financially more likely because you get divorced. You will fail financially most likely because you will develop a problem with alcohol or you will develop a problem with drugs, or you will burn out because of your stress. You will fail financially more because of the emotional toll of not being able to keep up with things. So when you make your plan for life and understand your purpose, you have to understand that balance is crucial. You cannot take out what has no deposits. In financial planning, you have to put in more than you take out. You have to build more than you break down. You have to do that in every area of your life. Your physical capital in terms of your exercise, your rest, and your shift work. I know shift work is an ER doc. Your emotional capital in terms of maintaining your relationships. Your relational capital in terms of maintaining your marriage, your relationship with your children, and mentoring, your relationship with your church and within your community. All of those are going to become crucial in terms of how much you're going to be successful. Now let's talk about the last part, and this is going to be financial capital. Where, in terms of your financial capital, your financial resources, where is this going to be important? And what are you going to need to do with it? First of all, there's some crucial things. Number one, don't get into debt. That sounds simple. Don't get into debt. You say, duh. And yet we do. Why do we get into debt? Because a lot of times it becomes family pressure. So getting into debt seems like a very straightforward statement. Don't get into debt. But what you have to do when you have your plan is you have to have a family plan. You're going to have to meet with your spouse, your children, and you're going to have to define for them and for yourselves what is going to be important or not important in your life. You're going to have to define as a team, as a family, as a group, that you will not live in this house, you will not drive this car, you will not necessarily go to this school, or you're going to have less time with me, you're going to have less resources, we're going to have a more strained environment. So debt management becomes an issue of how your family manages debt, not just how you manage debt. Does anybody already experience pressure? Has anybody had pressure in their lives in terms of getting into more debt to live, to have a certain life or to have certain things? Or has it mostly been school at this point? Mostly school, right? And how much of the school debt have you taken on that went to lifestyle? A lot? A little? Mostly just school. So you start behind the 8 ball. You cannot continue to get into debt. The next thing is you have to be in the correct economic structure. Correct economic structure, most people today are going into employed environments. If you go into an employed environment, you have to take advantage of every benefit that they have. The most important thing to take advantage of is the pension plan. Whatever is being provided, you max out the maximum amount to the pension plan that you possibly can. How much on average do you think you need to save to get to a point where you're at what we're going to call critical capital mass? Critical capital mass is the amount that you need to quit, the amount that you need where you don't have to work anymore. That amount, the average doctor can get to in 12.85 years if they save their money and don't lose it through efficiency. That amount, what do you think that is? It ranges between 1.5 million and 3.7 million for most people. How much do you think you have to save on average to get to that in your career? How much percentage of your income? Oh, thank you. What was yours? That's not right, but...
Yeah, that's not, I was going to say maybe 15, 20%.
Okay, it's about in the middle of that. We as doctors have to save about 30% of what we make. Now, the common prevailing factor within everything says, let's save 10%. You can't do it. You can't do it. Here's the reason. You guys start later than everybody else, and you burn out or die out earlier than everybody else. Statistics, sad. So there's about a 15-year window when you actually make enough money to save, and about a 15-year window when you're making that money and have the energy to continue to make that money to save the money. So it becomes crucial that you save during that window. What's the first thing you're going to do besides not get into debt? And that is pay down your debt. I recommend to you that you spend the first 1 to 3 years of your career after you graduate from residency like you're still a resident. And live in an apartment, do whatever you have to take, and pay down your debt completely. You will hear a lot of financial projections that say, no, save it on a pre-tax basis because the money's worth more. Don't take the tax, take the money, pay the taxes, and then pay off your debt. Don't believe it. I've been working with doctors for over 15 years. You will not do it. Spend the first 1 to 3 years of your life paying down the debt and live like a resident. This takes a big conversation if you're married. How many people are married? How many people want to be married? How many people want to stay married? So this requires a very important conversation because your spouse is, if you're already married, they've already experienced the delayed gratification. They're waiting for that big moment where they go, oh, thank you. House, car, here we go. So then all of a sudden you say, honey, it's going to be 1 to 3 more years. That's a big conversation. So have it. So once you get out of debt, then you're going to start saving. Save everything you can on a pre-tax basis. Everything you can on a pre-tax basis. So very quickly, how much time do I have left, Christian? 2 more minutes? 10, good. All right. If you are employed, again, use the pension plan. Up to now, $48,000, $50,000 a year you can get in. If you have any type of contract work, incorporate yourself, even if you're in employment. Like, for example, if you're a radiologist and you're in an employed position, but you have moonlighting outside of that, contract yourself as a corporation. Open a corporation, and then at the corporate level, you can set up pre-tax funding environments to save your money on a pre-tax basis. As much as you can, that you do not need to live on, try to find a way not to spend it. Try to save it at a corporate pre-tax level. What kind of corporation should you be? In the beginning, you should be an S corporation. At the end, as your surplus goes up, you should evolve to a C corporation. That doesn't mean anything to you right now, but just remember, start out as an S, end as a C. Your accountant will tell you stay an S. So you remember when I said become a C, so call me in 5 years and say, Davenport, my accountant said I'm an idiot, that you're an idiot for saying go to a C corporation. So ask me why. But basically, there's more environments on a pre-tax basis in a C corp than there is an S. The next thing is when you save your money, know what you need to quit, which means you need a financial plan. That thing, critical capital mass, what is the end site? What is the end goal? The average needs 1.5 to 3.7 million. What is your number? And when are you going to get there? And how are you going to do it? Most people make investment decisions without a plan. That's like prescribing medicine without a diagnosis. But that's what we do. Somebody comes along, they call you, they're the 58th. They called you for the 58th time. The other guy called 57 times. You figure, okay, well, he was persistent. Let me call them. Because you don't have time or energy or education, you sit somebody down, you finally get desperate, and you hope they're going to tell you to do the right thing. They come and they say, do this thing or do that thing. Do this investment plan or do this insurance policy or do this mutual fund or this annuity, whatever it is. But they're not planning for you. They're giving you a medication without a plan. The first thing you need to do is do a financial plan. You need to know how much you need to quit, when you're going to get there, and what's the most efficient way to do it. Your accountant and or your certified financial planner can, if you hire one, can give you a financial plan. Make sure you have that. The end at the beginning. Know the end at the beginning. Okay. Now, tax planning. This becomes very important, let me tell you. And the firm that I have is an accounting firm, so this is, as well as a financial planning firm, so this is going to sound like a derogatory statement, but I'm talking to ourselves. Accountants don't know anything about saving taxes or about creating efficiencies. They do in terms of getting the numbers very accurate and getting your tax return right, but they don't have a strong working knowledge of how to reduce your taxes efficiently and legally. So that's going to be either a tax attorney and or in combination with a financial planner. So do everything you can on a tax efficient basis, right? And as far as your retirement plan, if you're not getting a retirement plan within the company, the corporation that you work for or the business that you work for, you set one up yourself. It has to be analyzed well. There's probably about 12 different variations of retirement plans that you can have. They have to be analyzed, all of them, to see which gives you the most of the money with the least amount of time and effort and the least amount of cost. So make sure when you do a pension plan, have a pension plan analysis that does a comparison. There's defined benefits, there's defined contributions, there's all kinds of plans, but you get a plan analysis to implement it. If you're working for somebody, whatever plan they have is efficient for you, okay? Because it does not cost you anything. If they're employee cost, it's their cost. So you put every dollar you can. So let's finish up. Number one, what's the number one rule? Have a plan. Know what you need at the end from the beginning. Know what your critical capital mass is, how much money you need to quit. Know when you're going to get there. Second thing is, pay off debt. No, second thing is don't get into any more debt, right? Stop digging a hole. Third thing is pay off your debt. In the first 1 to 3 years of your career, live like a resident and pay off your debt. The next thing is put as much money as you can in on a pre-tax basis. If you're employed, put it into the retirement plan, whatever they have to deposit automatically in. Put the max that you can. Make sure that you're saving. Try to save a minimum of 20, but at least 20 to 30% of your money, starting from the point that you have no debt. So the first 3 years, I would not worry about putting money into a pension plan. Worry about paying off that debt and get 3 to 6 months of savings. Okay? That's your first 1 to 3 years. If you're incorporated by yourself, set up an S Corp, go to a C Corp ultimately, and set up all of your plans on a pre-tax basis. Get an accountant, get a financial planner, and get an attorney. All right? And then the final thing is, which was more crucial than all of it, where your biggest failure is going to be. It's going to be in managing those other resources, right? Your relational resources, your emotional resources, your physical capital. Because you're going to more likely not be financially successful because you burned out, died out, emotionally became checked out, or you're going to lose out with your family leaving you, or your business is going to go bankrupt. Those are the big things that's going to happen to you if you don't balance everything.